Okay. As Donna said beforehand, we do have the chat box going throughout the session. We have 3 speakers. We will try our very best to answer all of the questions as we go through it, but if not, we will circle back at the very end and answer any outstanding questions. So, as I say, with 3 speakers with us today, we're going to kick off with Alicia Proctor. She is a former Ulster University graduate and studied business with human resource management, if I'm correct. And Alicia is going to talk to you a wee bit about, interview nerves and things that you might do to help overcome those. Then we'll move on to Megan McKillop, who is a current placement student with Employability and Careers. And Megan is going to give us a bit of an overview about her journey and how she overcame interview nerves to help her secure her placement position. And then at the end, we will have Chris Muir, and he joins us from Ulster's Wellbeing Service. Okay, so he's a wellbeing advisor, and he's going to talk to us about a range of different wellbeing issues that you might be experiencing. So, for example, anxiety, bit of low mood, maybe you're having some issues with sleep patterns, just with all of the stress of everything that's going on at the minute. So, 3 really good speakers, and I know you will enjoy all of the information that they're going to share with us. I know Donna has said that, he enjoys interviews. I don't think anybody does. All right. And I think that everybody in this room today will either have experienced interview nerves before, or maybe you're going through interviews at the minute and you're currently experiencing interview nerves. And I, for one, will hold my hand up and say that I still get interview nerves. Okay. And that's okay. But it's all about how do you deal with that so that you can be successful when you do go to interview. So I'm not going to speak for too long. I'm going to hand over to our first guest speaker, who is Alicia, and I'm just going to give the floor over to you. And if I could ask all of our students just to keep your microphones on mute, just to avoid any interference in the background. Okay, Alicia, that's over to you now. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Can you hear me there, Laura? Hi, everyone.
Indeed, yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Proctor. I am as Laura would have said, I am an alumna of Ulster University. A little bit about myself there. I actually am, as you can tell from my accent there, I am from the United States of America, from Washington, D.C. I actually joined Ulster University as a mature student. So before I would have joined Ulster University, I would have actually been in the United States military. I was a program manager there, and I would have managed training. I would have managed all kinds of things for aviation maintenance departments in the United States Navy. When I got to Ulster University, I was so nervous about working in the Irish, professional environment. So what I did was I actually worked with the employability department as a student engagement member, and it really helped me. What's that thing called? It really helped me adapt to the current environment there. Following my experience with the employability department, I actually went on to work in private sector in Ireland here, and what I was a recruitment manager, and then I also had experience as a project manager, as a business development manager, and as an office manager. So well-rounded experience throughout my career. I've also been a career ready mentor for those of you who have done career ready and know what that is. So well-rounded experience, a lot of experience interviewing thousands of people. So I've been on every side of the box here. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we will get to them throughout the presentation, and also at the end of the presentation here. I do have quite a few questions that I am going to pose to you guys throughout my presentation. I just want you guys to answer in the chat so that the employability department can have as much data as they can to get their program design together for future events. So I'm just going to start with these slides here now. This is my holding slide. And so Future Skills Week. Perfect. So causes of interview anxiety. My first question to everybody would be, what is it about interviews that makes you guys nervous? So if you guys can answer in the chat, one wee thing or two wee things that you find that makes you nervous about the interviews, period. It could be from start to finish. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Those are things that, have always, come up. So some of the main causes that I find for interview anxiety would be one, a lot of people don't understand the recruitment process. They don't know, who they're chatting to. They don't know, how long it's going to take or anything like that. Just as someone has said, possibly being rejected, they don't know about their feedback. They don't know, who will be interviewing them, what type of questions they'll be asked, what type of experience, do they have enough experience for the role, and then definitely how do they prepare for the interview. So throughout my part of the presentation, I'm going to go through these common steps and then show you some surefire ways to be as prepared as possible, so you can have that comfort and that confidence and that control over the interview there. So number one, I don't understand the recruitment process. So most recruitment processes consist of 5 stages. The application stage, which is honestly, everyone, this is where your interview starts, So you have to make a great application, answer those questions as best as you can using the STAR method, situation, task, action, and results. The shortlisting process, this is when recruiters like myself, they would go through all the applications and then shortlist a number of people for interviewing. The interviewing process, you may have a phone screening, you may have a face-to-face interview or a series of face-to-face interviews there. And then we'll have our reference checks and any type of background investigations, and then your induction and your onboarding towards your hiring portion. Okay. So where's my next one? Okay, so who will be interviewing me? This is a really important slide because especially with everything that's going on now, you may not be interviewing first with the actual employer. So what I've set out here is the type of people that you will be, interviewing with. So your external recruitment. This is very important because sometimes a lot of people don't understand how they will be recruited and how people will be finding them. So an external recruiter, they're only going to contact you if they know you're going to get the job there, and so they're going to talk to you about, the company there. They're going to already know your skills, and then they're going to put you in to contact with the employer. An internal recruiter will be somebody who works for a third-party recruitment company, but does all of the work of the recruitment process. And internal recruitment finally will be your HR department, your managers, your owners, if it is a small business there. So next will be, what type of questions will I be asked? So if you can answer in the chat, where do you think you'll find the best where do you think you'll find the best information to find out what type of questions you'll be asked? So answer that in the chat. So I have it up here now, but definitely your job description and your personnel spec. Definitely your company website. So just as you said in the chat there, any information from the employer, researching the company online, just as you said, your application questions, your invitation to interview, any questions covered during your phone screen in there. So your job description and your application questions are actually made in tandem. I've never written a job description and never made the interview questions at the same time. That's what we do. When we make the job description, we make the interview questions there. So anything that's in that job description is what you're going to be asked on the interview there. That's the best way to find out what you'll be asked there, and your personnel spec. So anything that the company is saying, hey, this is what we want this is what we want you to have, that's the type of questions that you'll be asked. Any communication from the employer. So like I said, the application questions, on your invitation to interview, it may say what type of questions they'll be asking you. It may say, oh, you need to do a presentation on this topic, and then a Q&A based on your CV. And then just as you guys have said, the company website, be asked other questions outside of the job role. Normally, no, you will not be asked any questions outside of the job role at all. they have a specific thing that we want to ask you, and that's basically, do you fit the job role? What type of what type of adaptability you have to the job role? What is your understanding of the job role based on what we want you to do? And that's how we'll find out, and that's how we'll evaluate you throughout the interview process. And just as I said, any questions covered during the phone screening. So usually during the phone screening, we'll ask you simple questions that will be on a job interview, like, hey, what do you think about this role? Let's say you're going into HR and people will ask, do you have any questions for us? I'll cover that at the end. Any questions for us, that's in my later slides there. So definitely questions, during the phone interview, like, what do you think about the job? What do you think the job involves? So that will be asked in depth in a face-to-face or virtual interview, but definitely it'll be covered in a phone screening. So, do I have enough experience for this role? This is a really big one because, as Laura has already said, we're all, everybody has gone through an interview, and everybody has that interview anxiety. Even if you're very, experienced, you're always thinking, oh my goodness, do I have enough experience for this role? Can I do this? Maybe they do something different than what I would have done in a previous role, or maybe I have been taught something different. So sometimes, as I said, our interview anxiety may lead us to question our experience and our fitness for this role. So some of the things to remember is use all your reckonable experience. Reckonable experience is a term that we use in HR, and it's more so used in global. So if any of you have any global aspirations, maybe you want to work for an American employer, maybe you want to work for an employer that's in Shanghai or anything like that, reckonable experience is a term that you will get to know, and that just means any experience that fits the role. A lot of people, they only want to use professional working experience, something that they have been getting paid for, but you may have volunteering experience that may, be better than what you're getting paid for. Let's say a lot of people that is at Ulster University, maybe they're involved in sporting, maybe you are involved in your local rugby or GAA club, and maybe you're involved at a managerial level where you're tutoring people lower than you. That's great experience when you're going into an interview and you got to talk about teamwork, and you have to talk about how you've managed a team. You may not have managed a team in work, but you've managed a team through volunteering experience. Maybe you volunteer for, something like, mental health first aid or something like that. All of those things are reckonable experience. So you don't just have to pull from your professional work experience. You can pull from your education. You can pull from your volunteering experience. Anything that's going to actually make sense when it comes to answering those questions. And definitely understanding that employers are not looking for someone who can check every box. It's very rare that you get somebody who checks every single box. Is it good to ask? Okay, that's something that will be covered. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat, but that's something that will be covered. By the interviewer, so usually sometimes the interviewer will say, okay, we're looking for somebody to start at this point, and that's something that will usually be covered in the wrap-up of an interview. But just as I was saying, understanding that employers are not looking for somebody who can check every box. If you, let's say they have a list of 10 job requirements, 10 job roles and things like that, let's say you only check 7 out of those 10. Listen, apply anyway. Be confident anyway, because they're not looking for somebody who can do all of those things. They're looking for somebody who has the ability to want to do all of those things. That is for the full role, for the time that they want you to do the role. That's not always coming in the door. So don't get, discouraged by the fact that, hey, I've never worked with this technology, or I've never actually done it to this level before, but I really want this job. Be confident, apply anyway, and just work with what you have, and definitely reconcile your CV with the job description and the personnel specification. That's something that I've actually, mentored people on. Go through, have your CV have your CV and the job description side by side and go through and basically match each thing in your CV to what they're saying in the job description. If you don't understand something in the job description, maybe they're saying it a different way than what you've been doing, and when you see it on the job description, you're like, oh my goodness, I've never done that, or I don't know what that is. Just Google it and think, and Google might have a more simplified way of saying it, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I've been doing that the entire time, and then what I say is, I write wee notes on job descriptions, like, okay, I've done this for this amount of time, I've done this. Yeah, I'll get to that in the next. I'll get to that in the next. I'll get to that in the next slide there. So definitely, as I've said, go through the job description with your CV, making sure that you're going through each thing, because, as I've said, the interview questions will be based on the job description. So if you know from your own CV, hey, I've done this part, I've done that part. This is where I've done it. I've done it. Let's say I've been at, Education and Co. doing this for 6 months. Okay, in the job description it says, let me pull up a job description here, Molly. In the job description it says to support the Center for Excellence Manager in preparation of any program. Okay, if you've ever supported anything before, okay, how have you done that? Hey, at my job I've supported my manager by doing A, B, C, and D, and that's in my CV. Okay, so next is, how can I prepare for this interview? Okay, knowing your resources. I always say take your CV to the interview. Okay, and that's a part of this slide. Knowing your resources. Okay, so what are your resources? Your university resources, I'll get to that question next. Your university resources, you can do mock interviews and one-to-ones with all of your careers advisors. Ask for what you need from the university. Your CV is not just, I'm sorry, your university experience is not just going to lectures and, taking exams and things like that. It's not just about the degree certificate. It's about the wraparound services. So like the careers and the library there. Some of you may be in arts, in the arts faculty, or some of you may be into engineering and the built environment. They have resources in the library that can help you with any type of interview. Let's say you have to use a specific technology or show that you know how to use a specific technology as a part of your interview there. If you need, go to the library and they may have that technology available for you. Okay, and then you can practice using that, or use the university's seat for that during your interview. Let's say you need to use a specific part of Adobe or something like that. That's something that you can use from the university, and you don't have to pay for it by yourself. you know Definitely, employer resources, your job description, and your personnel specification, your main point of contact through the recruitment process. Don't be afraid to ask the recruiter or your interview any questions. If you want, send them an email and say, hey, what type of questions will be asked? I've had that question posed to me a number of times. How would the interview be laid out? And I'll say to them, hey, I'm going to ask you this many questions based on communication. I'm going to ask you a couple situation-based questions, based on health and safety, and based on this and that throughout the interview process. Please do not be afraid to ask anybody any questions about the interview. They've been asked these questions 50 million times. It's something that they're very used to answering. Your personal resources. Always bring your CV with you to an interview, or have it near you. If you are, let's say, doing a virtual interview, no one knows your CV better than you. So I always say use it as a reference point. Don't just freestyle. Always use your CV and your portfolio. Have everything in front of you, and then definitely utilize your family and friends as well. Bounce ideas off of them, and which leads me to, yeah, should you research your company culture, values, and strategy? Yes, definitely research the company values and strategy, because listen, you need to know what matters to the company. When you know what matters to the company, that's going to make you prepare for the interview even more. Extracurricular. Well, would you have to take a cover letter? Don't take your cover letter with you. You don't need that, but definitely take your CV. And then I always say take something else, right? So recently my sister was preparing for an interview, and I had to let her know, listen, you can take notes to the interview. I always say, take your notes with you. No one's going to say anything about you having notes, which leads me to my next slide. Here's my next slide. Right. Become the interviewer, right? So this is my surefire way of overcoming interview nerves. I was never really good at interviews until I became a recruiter. That's what made me a great interviewer, was actually becoming a recruiter. So I always say, become the interviewer. It's a bit of pseudoscience there. Practice interviewing for the job with family and friends. Instead of being the interviewee, become the interviewer. Because when you're sitting there and you have to ask people questions, and you have to ask follow-up questions just to know what type of answer that you want, you become, you get to know what type of answers that they need, and then write those answers and questions down, and then when you're going to your interview, have those with you, and then use those as reference points throughout your interview. Let's say you have a very intense interview for a new job, have your CV and then have your Q&As there, and then that way, if you're stumbling, you can use those as a reference point. You're not reading off them, but definitely use those questions and answers as a reference point. Sometimes, we haven't interviewed for quite a while, so definitely using your family and friends, or even if you want a more controlled environment, ask the career center whether or not they can facilitate that for you. Maybe a group of you can get together and do a mock group interview. Maybe you can do a mock assessment center, but definitely, interviewing each other has always worked for me. It's always worked for anybody that I've mentored. If I had an intern or anything like that, I always brought them on to interviews with me, and then had them ask questions, and then ask them afterwards. And they said, you know what? I had a much better experience. You know what I mean? Much better experience, and much, a greater knowledge of the interview after I've asked the questions. Because when you're in that driver's seat, as as the employability department have just said, you know what you want, you know what you need, and then you got to figure out how to get there and how to get what you need out of the person. And when you have all of that information, write that down, take it with you. Okay, so just as I said, take control of your interview, bring along all your references being your CV, any of your Q&As, any information that you know about the company. For my last job, my boss was very into Star Wars and things like that, and he used to write loads of things on LinkedIn, loads of articles on LinkedIn. I printed out some of the articles and brought them with me, you know what I mean, just to use as reference points throughout interview. It really worked, So, going through LinkedIn, and seeing who works for the company, what they're really into, seeing what the company is up to, what they want to get into, how they want to develop. That's all very important for the interview, because it's all about knowing what the business wants. How should you act? Just take your time. Don't act nervous. You know what I mean? If the interviewers take a moment to converse with each other mid-interview, that's absolutely nerve-wracking for anybody. But just sit there, calm and collected. If you want to distract yourself, look at your notes, look at your CV, you know what I mean? But don't, don't give them the energy while they're doing that. Just basically look at your notes, look at your CV, distract yourself, and reassure yourself while you're doing that. Sometimes sometimes people take time during interviews because maybe they want to ask a question a different way. Maybe there were questions that they want to ask that weren't on the interview script. And maybe you're presenting them with better ideas throughout the interview, and they think, hey, you know what, let's go through and ask a different way. This person has a lot more experience than we thought they did. Maybe we need to just ask different questions so we can get the greater value out of this interview. yes, it's okay to make light jokes, but just know your audience. Know your audience. When you get to an interview, you'll know the type of people that you're interviewing with. Some people will give you feedback throughout the interview, and some people will not. So if you're prepared, if you have all your references, your CV, your Q&As, you know what I mean, your company information, then you'll know what type of people you're interviewing with from the first couple of questions. If they're going to be the type of people that, don't, give you feedback after everything, then hey, let's not make too much jokes, but keep it light, keep it airy, and then be personable, because you're measuring engagement from the interview. You're measuring whether or not you'll be a good fit from the interview there. And like I said, if you are prepared, that's great for an interviewer to know. Checkers, I just looked at the time. I'm so sorry. So let me get to this next slide. So just as I said, be encouraged, use your resources, use the university's resources, use your CV, use all your applicable experience in any to answer any questions. Become that interviewer, practice, 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 and then remember that everybody has had an interview before. Nobody walks into an interview, even if they're at executive level, and and says, you know what, I'm going to rock this interview. It's all about that adrenaline. Everybody gets nervous before an interview. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Alicia. Some really, really valuable points in there. Probably one of the key takeaways for all of our students or graduates or alumni who are here with us. And preparation really is key for settling those interview nerves. So if you can take some of the information from Alicia's presentation about how you can prepare. So for example, looking at those job documents, trying to identify what questions you might be asked, and then in advance of your interview, thinking about what experiences you're going to talk about, how do your skills match all of those questions, then it should really help to settle nerves on the day. Now, I know there were a few questions coming in through the chat box, but for now, I'm going to just move on to Megan, and we will circle back at the very end and we will answer any outstanding questions, okay? So Megan, I'm just going to bring your slides up. Alicia, loads of thank yous coming in the chat box, so everybody clearly enjoyed what you were saying. So Megan, I will hand over to you now at this stage.
Thanks very much, Laura. Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So I'm just going to go through basically how I would overcome interview nerves, some tips and tricks that I found helped me secure a placement in second year for this year. So I'm just going to go through here. It might not take us, I'll try and be as quick as I can because we're tight for time. So bit about me, I'm currently on placement with Ulster as a technical IT placement student. I study computer science at McGee. I'm going into final year now in September. So I'll just share some tips and tricks on how I got my placement. So one of the key things I think to settle my nerves is to be as confident as I can going into an interview. So to do these things, it's kind of like you need to do your research about the company that you're applying for. So a lot of the anxiety surrounding interviews is based on not knowing what to expect. So researching the company that you're applying for and figuring out what you really like and what really inspires you about the company, what makes you want to work for them, can shine through in an interview. Whereas if they ask you, oh, why do you want to work for us? And you're kind of sitting there like a rabbit under headlights, not knowing really what to say. I feel like researching beforehand. Google could be your best friend. They might have a website that you could go on to. Just Google their company name. Maybe they will have a website, maybe they don't. Maybe LinkedIn would be a better resource if you know the name of maybe someone who you've been emailing back and forward for the interview. They might have something on their LinkedIn that could lead you to the company. Familiarize yourself with the work that they do and what they have to offer. So how could you contribute to the company and positively impact them? Knowing that not only boosts your own confidence, but it shows them that you are confident in your own abilities and that you know that you're worth, employing, that you're worth the time and effort of going to the interview, getting the interview and everything like that there. So this shows the employer that you've really taken time to really find out about the organisation and that you've made the effort rather than just kind of winging it on the day. Because if you're winging it, they'll be able to know. They'll be able to tell if you're winging it. If you put in the hard work, then it will pay off. So I'll just go to the next one here. Practice. This is another tip. I feel like the more you do something, the more comfortable you get. Like, for example, now, if you had told me last year that I'd be talking in front of I don't know how many people, I would probably have had a heart attack. But thankfully, through placement, like, I've overcome a lot of my fears of public speaking and, you know, talking in front of people and cutting out filler words and stuff like that. So I've really practiced to try and get as comfortable as I can. But the saying, I've been told this since I was younger, through like secondary school and university and sport and stuff like that. If you fail to prepare, you can prepare to fail. So that basically means if you're not going to put in the hard work, you can't really expect to get anything out of it. It's like anything. And the motivating factor for me would be that if I was back in second year, I'd be thinking to myself, like, this is my future. Like, the only reason I'm going to uni is to get my degree and be successful. So you have to put in the hard work then, because if you don't, then it'll just be a waste of time. So I feel like you need to get your priorities in line. Yes, going out at uni is all fun and games, but at the end of the day, you're there to get your degree. You're there to get a good graduate job. So getting this placement will make you as employable as you could possibly be come graduation. If you have a placement behind you, you've done well, and that you know you're confident, you've got all the competencies that you need to be a successful employee in a company, whatever sector you decide to go into. Just put in the hard work now, and I promise it'll pay off. So practicing in an interview to kind of calm your nerves. You could practice your interview questions, so you could get like your mom or your dad or your friends or someone that you're comfortable with to maybe sit at the kitchen table, or even if it could be on FaceTime or something. I've done that before, where I've had a presentation and I've made my friends go into Microsoft Teams, and I say, just sit there, tell me what's working, what's not working, because at the end of the day, if you can identify those things before going into the interview, then you'll know what to cut out or what to not cut out, what's working. Maybe if you're talking too fast, if you're talking too slow, if you need to be a bit more energetic, you know, the people that you're talking to at the interviewers, they'll know that you're comfortable by just your body language and the way that you're presenting yourself. So you can strengthen these weaknesses for the big day of your interview. So next wee slide here. Embrace positive self-talk. This is one thing I did struggle with. I would have been quite negative beforehand, but now I know myself that I'm more than capable. I'm more than capable of doing anything, you know, any task that's handed to me. It's just mentally you need to get over that barrier of I can't, and you need to tell yourself that you can. It's just going to maybe take a wee bit longer, or it could be a bit more difficult. So one of the things I would tell you, my own line manager told me this. He says anybody that we've given an interview is more than capable for the job. It's just finding the right person for the job. So the confidence in itself, knowing that the fact that they've offered you an interview, that means that you're more than capable. So you can't, I know everybody kind of doubts themselves and you're like, oh, what if I'm not good enough? You can't go in with that attitude. You have to go in with the attitude, I'm more than capable. I've put in the hard work and it's going to pay off in the end, and I'm going to get this placement. And if you don't, then it obviously wasn't meant to be, but you'll learn from the last time what to do better. Or you can even ask your interviewer for feedback. If you don't get the placement, you can say, what did I do wrong? What can I improve on? You know, and then learn from that, and then you'll ace the next one. So you need to be confident in yourself and your ability to make a lasting impression on the interviewer, so that they don't forget who you are and what you have to offer. Maybe it's just that one little thing. It could have been a handshake. It could have been, you know, a lighthearted joke at the start, or even a conversation at the end. I know for my own interview, I had at the end of the interview, my CV, I had worked at a restaurant in Cushendun. I was washing dishes, and the interviewer happened to be at that restaurant before, and it was just like a little light-hearted conversation. At the end of the day, you're going into a job, you're going to have to work with these people day to day, so a good, you know, rapport, if you can build that, it'll last, because they'll remember, oh, she was lovely, like I really did click with her, like, you know, I like what she's about, she's normal, she's not, you know, all just serious, and, you know, it's not boring, but you can be very serious. You need to have a lighthearted, you need to have like a good friendship or rapport with the people you're going to be working with in the future. So confidence is also good, but you can't be arrogant, because there's a big balance. If someone's maybe just a wee bit, they come across as big-headed or cheeky, or you know yourself. It's one of those things where there's a balance. You can be nice and polite and confident in yourself, but you also have to find that balance where you're not coming across as arrogant. How I personally cope with nerves. So there's been lots of times in my life where I've had, you know, a big event, or it could have been a big camogie match or something like that. And I would be the first to say that I would have been a nervous wreck before the match. I would have been crippled with anxiety. I would be panicking. I'd be, you know, not sleeping the night before and not eating or anything like that there. But once I got to the match and the ball was thrown in, the whistle went, it was like a switch had just went on. I had to react. It was my fight or flight was engaged. And thankfully mine's a positive reaction. Whenever my adrenaline goes, I react in a good way, because I know that my teammates are relying on me. So my adrenaline kicks in, my performance was positive. I had the confidence in myself that I had put in all the hard work at training. I had all the skills that I needed to win my individual battles, and I could influence my team in a better way. If I played bad in the match, it wasn't down to me not being capable. It was just down to outside factors. Maybe it was I wasn't drinking enough water. I didn't fuel my body properly. I could have been drinking the night before a match, or I could have been slacking at training. It could be factors like that. It's not because I wasn't fit to do well, because I can. It just means I didn't prepare in the correct way. This is literally, you could apply this the exact same way to an interview. You could go to an interview and you could perform really well because you've put all the hard work in, you've researched, you've prepared mentally, you've done everything you need to do the night before, you've practiced and practiced and practiced, and that will show. Because whenever you go into the interviewer will know that you're ready, that you're prepared. Whereas if you're going in and you haven't really researched anything, they've like, this wee woman hasn't a clue what she's talking about, and she's just here because, you know, she has to be here. So there's a little diagram here. It kind of shows you how your adrenaline works. It's probably the same, because I know as soon as I even made eye contact with my interviewer at the time, my heart started racing. I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is the big moment now. So whenever your adrenaline goes, your heart rate it pumps blood around your body, and it engages your fight or flight response. So it could be, right, this is it, I'm ready for this, or it could be, oh no, I'm terrified. But you just need to learn how to get over that, and it's literally just putting yourself in that situation over and over again to get more comfortable with it. So as I said, practicing with a family member, friends, someone you're comfortable with, that is the key to finding out what works for you. So I've set up a little night before, morning of interview routine, which I found was quite helpful for me. The night before, definitely get a good night's sleep, because if you're up wriggling about all night, you're going to wake up, you're going to be grumpy, you're going to be tired, your brain's not going to be working the way it should. If you struggle with anxiety, which I know a lot of people do, I would have struggled a lot with anxiety whenever it came to interviews and stuff. There's lots of stuff and resources on YouTube. You could do like a guided breathing video or a meditation video, or even just calm music. Just put your headphones in, turn the lights off, and try and get calm. At least if you can't sleep, just try and settle yourself. Another tip would be self-care, de-stress. I would recommend these because you could go for a bath, you could read a book, you could listen to your favorite music, a podcast, or something to try, stick on a film, something that makes you happy, whatever. Set your outfit out, your clothes. It could be your suit, it could be your dress, it could be whatever. Set them out the night before. Have your notes sitting ready for the morning. Don't really look at them too much the night before, because you're just gonna fry your head. you're gonna fry your head. So I would just recommend leaving them sitting out on the table for the morning. Set an alarm earlier than normal, just to give you that wee bit of time in the morning, so you're not rushing. The morning of, definitely get a good healthy breakfast. If it's water or something like that, there, just fill your body with all the good stuff that it needs. Don't cram. Summarize your notes. You've done the preparation. It's just refreshing your memory. Take time on your appearance. It could be makeup, it could be going for a shower, putting your aftershave on, your perfume, whatever's going to make you more presentable. Leave early. I would definitely recommend this. I'm from Cushendall, so the city life isn't really for me. I'm not used to traffic or anything like that there, so definitely plan ahead. Being early is far better than being late, and it could make a good impression. And then go and ace your interview. That is the only tips I would have for my little routine. And then any questions or anything like that there, I'm happy to answer. I didn't really look at the chat box there, but I'm sure I'll get to pick up on all the questions after. And that's everything for me. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was really insightful. And I think it's really good to hear your perspective, because you were there this time last year when you were applying for your placement. And as you say, you had those crippling anxieties, which I'm sure at some stage we've all experienced, whether it was for an interview, whether it was for something really important that was happening in our life, or even for you in the past when it's been through your sporting activities. So I'm pretty sure that everybody in the chat box or who's engaging with us today will be able to, pinpoint a moment in time when they've had the shaky knees and the rapid breathing and the rapid heart rate and all of that. And as you said, it's getting strategies in place to help you overcome some of those nerves. And there were some really lovely hints and tips in your final slide there about what to do the night before and the morning of, which is really good. I'm not sure that we had any questions as such. Donna, maybe if I've missed anything, it was mostly just feedback and saying how everybody was enjoying everything that you were saying. I'm just scrolling back up to make sure I didn't miss anything. No.
Just very, very positive feedback there, and Shauna has put into the chat box useful tips further in the week to support your whole mental well-being through my excellent sessions. Brilliant, lovely, enjoyable sessions. I really am buzzing. It's great information, practical tips. Love to see it from both Alicia and Megan. Thanks a million, guys. Really brilliant.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we will move on then to Chris. If you're still there, I can't see you on my screen. You are, yes. So I'm going to hand over to Chris. Chris doesn't have any slides to share with us, so he's just going to do it in a nice conversational style. So again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat box and we'll get to them as we go through. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much. Folks, how's it going? So my name's Chris and I work for the student wellbeing team in Ulster University, and I'm normally based in Jordanstown, but obviously with COVID I'm working from home at the moment. And I was asked to come along today and just discuss a wee bit about understanding and overcoming what our interview nerves are, okay? So specifically, what are nerves? How do nerves impact our body? And then if we can understand nerves, can we then put something in place to overcome that to help us prepare, okay? So first off, I have the chat box open. I won't sort of type any answers in, but I'll try and respond as we kind of go through. But I'm just going to spend some time, we'll kind of look at what nerves are, how physiologically it impacts us, and then just kind of lead on from what Megan and Alicia have already said. There's some like brilliant practical steps there. And Megan, bonus points for mentioning self-care. That's the answer for everything, okay? And I will tell every student I work with about the importance of self-care, okay? But let's look at sort of what like nerves are, okay? So when we are feeling nervous, okay, physiologically what is happening is our heart begins to beat faster, our respiration rates increases, our blood vessels in our arms and legs start to dilate, so you might feel a wee bit tingly. Our digestive processes change, and our glucose levels, our sugar energy levels, and our bloodstream increase. And this is all our body's way of dealing with a perceived threat, okay? Nerves mimic the impact of anxiety in the body, okay? So a lot of the coping strategies that we would use to manage anxiety will be the same coping strategies that we would use to manage nerves. As Megan, I think it was mentioned, when we are nervous, our body can enter into what's known as our fight or flight response, okay? And this is commonly known as our body's way of responding to a perceived threat or a perceived danger. So it's the body's either going to meet that danger head on and fight with it, or it's going to run from it to protect itself. Now, there are some ways that nerves and anxiety are slightly different, in that nerves can be something in the likes of an interview that you're going to have a time and a date building up to, okay? So it's really important that we preempt this by looking after ourselves. And if you imagine that everybody is like a bottle of Coke, and as our nerves build, that bottle of Coke begins to shake. We have to have a way of slowly releasing the pressure, or else when it does come to this interview or this sort of focal point of the nerve, or what's making us nervous, that Coke will explode, that bottle will explode, and it won't be the sort of the easiest or the most smoothest way of releasing that pressure, okay? So I want to take us through kind of some real practical steps on how we manage our nerves and manage maybe our anxiety levels as well, okay? So some of the practical steps that I kind of had was be prepared, and Alicia and Megan have kind of went through this, so I'll not go through that again, but having a confidence that you know what you want to say, and you know that you know your topic and you know the organisation you're going to go speak to. It was brilliant to hear Alicia say, bring notes with you. You're going to arrive early, set some time beforehand the interview to go through your notes, whether, as Megan said, you're arriving in the city a bit early and you're just sitting in your car reading through your notes. That's all really important, okay? What I would suggest is to allow yourself time to prepare, okay? Know where you're going to go. If nerves are the build-up of adrenaline, what we want to try and refrain from doing is adding any additional stress into our day, okay? If we can, do some form of physical exercise the morning of an interview or the morning of something that is going to make you particularly nervous, because exercise is a brilliant way, as Megan said, of burning off that adrenaline, okay? Exercise will naturally de-stress us and bring our heart rate down, okay? Another thing to try and avoid on the morning or the day of an interview is adding in caffeine, okay? Caffeine as a substance is a stimulant, okay? So what that's going to do is that's going to increase our adrenaline levels. It's going to give us that wee energy boost, okay? Now, I know that sort of Irish culture, tea is a comforter, okay? So we might just want a wee warm drink. So have a decaf cup of tea or coffee before you go, and don't wear your interview clothes because you'll spill it over yourself. So try and get the exercise in the morning, try and have that comfort, and try and do anything that you know that is going to help bring your stress levels down, okay? Allow yourself time and get there in plenty of time. Practice, as Megan said, some positive self-talk, okay? Positive self-talk and positive affirmations are a way of thinking into existence that you are going to be able to do that, okay? If you've got to an interview panel has sat, went through your CV and decided that you have enough experience for that post. So you are already experienced for that post. They just want to get to know you. So the interview panel already have faith in your ability to do that job. And having interviewed people and went through the interview process myself, we as an interview panel, you're definitely wanting you to come in and sell yourself. Another thing with tea and coffee as well is, and with anxiety, is that it'll dehydrate you and it'll make your mouth do what my mouth's doing right now, and that you constantly clamor for water, okay? As you arrive at your interview, okay, some practical tips if you arrive and you're feeling quite nervous, and this is for whether it's nerves, going into an exam or going into an interview. 2 simple techniques, okay? Your breathing techniques, okay? When we take deep breaths, that stops the adrenaline flow throughout our body. It allows us to ground ourselves and re-establish some sort of rational thinking, because as adrenaline pumps around our body, our thought processes start to speed up, and we then start to struggle to formulate rational thought. And that's what happens when we get a wee bit nervous, okay? So a simple breathing technique is the 7-11 breathing, okay? I always remember the 7-11 breathing from being in America and the store. And all the 7-11 breathing is you're in their big gulp, is you're taking a big gulp of air, okay? So you're trying to breathe in for 7 seconds and out for 11. If you repeat that 3 times, in 30 seconds, you will have hopefully practice a routine that will help ground you and will help calm you. And what you'll realize as well is that nobody's aware that you're doing a breathing technique. I can be sitting outside an interview room. I can be walking into the interview room and taking 10 seconds before I start speaking, just to allow myself to ground, okay? The other technique then is a grounding technique. And grounding techniques are used to help the body fight off that fight or flight response, okay? So as I said earlier, fight or flight response is started because of perceived threat, okay? Now, an interview may be scary, it may be anxiety provoking, it may make you nervous. However, it isn't a threatening environment. So what we want to do is calm the body. And one way we can do that is a grounding technique, again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it's thinking internally to yourself about 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. As you're doing that, all that you're internally doing is reminding yourself and reminding your body that although in potentially a nerve-wracking environment, you're not in an unsafe environment, and that will help reduce your levels of stress and anxiety throughout the interview process. If you get through the interview and if a question comes up that you're not sure of, ask the interview panel to repeat the question as you go through your breathing techniques to help yourself calm yourself back into allowing that rational thought process to come through, okay? I've just popped open the chat box. If anybody has any questions, I'll maybe just wrap, because I know we're kind of pushed for a bit of time there, so I'll maybe stop there and just take some more talks as well, if anybody has any questions for me. The other thing as well is that if you're feeling particularly anxious, if you're feeling particularly nervous about a upcoming interview, call into the student wellbeing team, make an appointment and speak with one of our advisors, and we can talk you through whether it's the grounding and breathing techniques, because that's part of our role. And we work all summer. We will help support students 9 to 5. Thanks for posting the website. And if you put that through, we'll happily sort of support you through that process, and whether that's interviews or for exams or assignments, whatever it may be.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. And I don't think I've ever heard of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, or even 7-11. So I must put those into practice the next time I find myself in that fight or flight mode, which I find myself in quite often. So Shauna has posted there, thank you Shauna for posting the wellbeing website. So if you do feel overly anxious, okay, please connect with Chris and the rest of the team. You're based in all of the campuses, so I know we'll have people here with us today across all of our campuses, so please feel free to call in and see the wellbeing team if you do feel that you could do with some more support with coping techniques. And then likewise, obviously, employability and careers, we're here to support you with the preparation. Chris has his dog there. We always say about pets being a nice calming influence. So maybe that's another thing, bring your dog with you. I'm not sure how that would go down. But as I say, employability and careers, we're here to support you guys as well with preparing for your interviews. So whether that is helping you to look through all of those job documents, helping you to identify what questions you might be asked, pointing you in the direction of our online resources where you can complete mock interviews. I know Shauna posted that link earlier on in the chat box. Or even speaking to us face-to-face, you can book guidance appointments with us. So if you go to Handshake, you can look at all of our availability, and we would be more than happy to talk through any interview anxieties that you might have and help you to prepare so that when you walk into that room, you're as confident as you possibly can be. Okay, and I don't think I could say that you will be 100%, without nerves or without your anxieties, but it's keeping a cap on those. It's making sure that they don't overtake all of the wonderful things that you want to tell the interviewer about you. All right. Does anybody have any questions to pop into the chat box for any of our speakers, or even for us, the employability and careers team that are here?
Laura, I think there was a question earlier that I remember about people asking what questions to ask at the end of an interview, and they ask you. So I wanted to give some feedback on that. I always say, ask about training and development. As I've already said, you're measuring engagement in the interview. You want to see your engagement and retention, whether or not you as an interviewee plan on staying with the company. So I always ask about training and development. If the interview panel has gone through so much throughout the interview, and that you feel like you are completely stuck, and you don't want to work your brain too much, just say, no, thank you. You guys have answered all my questions throughout the interview. And that's a surefire way of saying, hey, I was engaged throughout the interview and you answered all my questions, without saying, no, I don't have any questions.
Yeah, what I would maybe add to that as well, Alicia, and I hope you'll back me up on this one just with your background, we would always say, where we've talked earlier on about preparation and researching, okay, and reviewing all of your job documents beforehand, make sure that you don't ask a question that they've already given you the answer maybe in the job documents, or that you could find it on their website easily. So that also demonstrates a level of preparation on your part. So please just make sure that you're not asking a question that has already been, the answer has been given to you, whether it's through job documents or whether it's through something you could find on their interview or on their website. Shauna is asking us, is it okay to ask the interviewer to repeat a question? I would say absolutely. Alicia, would you agree?
Absolutely, Shauna. If you are having, I think I put this in the chat earlier, if you're having problems, really understanding where the interviewer is or what the interviewer is asking you, ask them, tell them that, like, hey, can you repeat that? Or can you give me an example of what you're asking me? And that way they can ask you a different way to get the answer that they want. It's to help you and to help them. Don't be afraid to really ask, hey, can you give me an example of that? Or can you ask that again? And just as Chris had mentioned there, and I had mentioned earlier, look at your notes as you're doing that, just to take your mind away from, being nervous, and then answer the question. Don't be afraid to say, okay, give me a moment, and then answer the question.
Yeah, and sometimes questions can be quite lengthy and maybe have a couple of parts in it. So it's okay that if you start to answer that question and then perhaps you've forgotten, oh, what is the second part? It's okay then, once you've answered the first part, to say, would you mind repeating the second half of your question? And that really demonstrates that you want to give the best possible answer as well. Obviously, you don't want to do it on every single question because it'll maybe appear that you're not listening. But certainly, if you get stumped or stuck, it's okay to take a couple of minutes and just think about it, a couple of moments and think about it. or ask the interviewer to repeat the question. All right. Okay, so I think this is Donna has typed in, at an interview, who should I look at in the panel? Okay, for me, I would be saying you need to maintain eye contact with everybody on the panel at some stage, because you don't know who actually has the overriding decision. So it's really good to try and acknowledge everybody. You will normally find that within an interview panel, there's somebody who will be a wee bit more expressive, or who will agree and nod and give you those really good cues as you're going through. So you might want to maybe take some encouragement from them, but please do make sure that you attract, attention from all of the panel. All right. Let's see a few more questions here. I've had experiences of being asked to repeat myself because you're being too quiet. How can you recover from that? So, John, I'm assuming maybe whenever you're in an environment where you feel a wee bit nervous, you tend to maybe retreat, and maybe it goes a little bit like a whisper, whereas some other people tend to maybe get a bit loud and a bit quick. That's okay. If they've asked you to repeat, just have it in your mind and think, okay, I must be getting too low. I need to make sure I'm projecting my voice, and the next time I answer my question, I'll work on that and improve it. Okay, so don't let it put you off. Just make sure that you take on board the feedback that they're giving you, and make sure that your next question, you are actually projecting your voice. And I think, Chris, maybe you'll come in with this. I'm not an expert in this, but sometimes our breathing can affect the tone and the level of our voice. So just making sure you're keeping your breathing under control to help you be able to project.
I think, the interviewer has asked you to speak louder because they're interested in what you have to offer and what you have to say. So take it as it's not a knockback. It's just actually them understanding that they are very high pressured situations, and some people, as Laura has said, their breathing will impact how they speak. Another thing to be mindful of is our accents. We tend to speak quite quickly anyway, but when we get nervous, we start to speak even quicker. So it's just about being mindful about your pace and the volume you're speaking up, but I wouldn't take that as a knock at all. And in terms of the eye contact, if you're making eye contact with an interview panel, it shows that you've got confidence in what you're speaking about. I would always say make eye contact with the person that's speaking to you, because it's another way of communication. And then as you're answering your question, move your eyes between the different members of the panel. And that shows that you have a confidence to speak to the entire group and not just focus on one person. And if there's anything else, sorry, I'm just looking at there are a couple of questions going through there at once.
I know I'm trying to go through them in a logical order here, but they keep adding in, which is great.
And if you ask a question, tell me about yourself. How long should you give your answer? I just think you put yourself out there and you describe yourself as sort of eloquently as you can. It's not a life story, but it's a quick insight into who you are and what you enjoy doing. And it's just the interview panel trying to get to know you, because your CV or your application, they know you have the experience, but they want to know who you are, how you are. So I wouldn't go through a full life story, but I would also let them know what my hobbies and my interests are.
Right. Alicia, maybe your background, you might be able to help our students with that question about, tell me about yourself. What would you expect to hear, or, what sort of length would you expect it to be?
Not too long, because we're going to have a long interview. You have to be conscious of the fact that people may have about 10 to 15 interviews in that day there. So even if you just have 1 minute, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I plan to do, this is a little bit about me, that's perfect there. Don't dwell on that portion of the interview. The real chance for you to shine is in answering the actual question. So please don't dwell on the portion of tell me about yourself. You know what I mean? It's just a quick kind of icebreaker anyway. You know what I mean? We're really focused on, can you do the job? And like I said, your engagement into the company, your engagement into the actual position. One thing that I did want to mention there is, even though your CV may be maybe 2 pages long, bring anything, like I said, bring your notes there. So if you are using, like I said, that reckonable experience, and maybe the CV is only so long, you can't, fit everything on there, maybe bring an extra document just for yourself, just to read off of, for that volunteer experience and things like that, just so you know and you have your wee reference points to look at. No one's going to deduct points off of your interview for not for, like I said, for looking at your notes throughout the interview. Okay.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Okay, and I'm going to work down. I appreciate we're just going slightly over time now, so let's get through these. So should we always follow the STAR method if it's not stated in advance? We would recommend any question where you're asked, give me an example of a time when. Okay, so if you're being asked to demonstrate a specific skill, for example, we would recommend using the STAR method for that, and it helps you to give a really good structured answer with all of the elements that an employer or an interview panel would be looking for. Okay. If I'm asked to do chemistry calculations, would it be okay to ask for a calculator and a piece of paper? Alicia, would you?
So if so sorry there, Laura, if you are asked
Okay.
to do any type of practical examination, usually the tools will be given to you. If not, I always say prepare anyway. Let's say if you are from a technical background and you're going to be doing, a part of your job is doing calculations, always bring something with you just in case. You never know the employer, God love ye, but they will usually give you the tools. I've been in situations where I had to type up documents and things like that before the actual interview. So they'll usually give you the tools that they want you to use in order to do that. But just as a rule of thumb, if you do calculations, bring a wee calculator if you can.
Yeah. And if you are going to, if you think you are going to be facing those practical elements, maybe in advance you could contact the employer and ask what equipment or what resources would be available to you on the day, and then at least you'll be prepared going into it, again helping you just overcome one anxiety for the day. Okay, and then we've got towards the bottom now. So Megan, this is directed towards you. How did you feel when you successfully secured your placement?
I was very buzzing whenever I got it. I was really nervous because we had only started applying, and I had been to a couple of interviews and I hadn't really got anywhere with them. But whenever I got the phone call, I started crying. It was that much of a weight lifted off my shoulders, and I didn't know, COVID, I didn't know what was ahead of me. I was so thankful that I got it when I did and I had secured it, but it just proved that all the hard work had actually paid off, and it was worth it in the end. So definitely was buzzing to get it secured.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Well, listen, I'm going to bring it. Oh, hold on, what have I got? What utensil would you choose? Oh, hold on. Apologies, I had just come out of the chat box there. Let me see. I was asked a weird question. What utensil would you choose? Without any context, what might the purpose of such a question be?
Yeah.
So,
well, Laura, I'm just going to have to head.
Yes, of course. Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chris.
For coming.
So,
if there's any support, from the wellbeing team, please reach out and make contact. And thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Megan.
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that question. Does anybody else?
Yeah. So Laura, she's asking. So sometimes employers will ask you a situation-based question, or kind of a "what would you do?" Kind of want to think. They want to assess your analytical and your thinking methods there. So if somebody is asking you what type of a utensil would you choose, they want to see basically how you would think and how you would use something. So let's say hey, I would choose a fork because forks do A, B, C, and D. I would choose a spoon. I would choose a spork. And how are you thinking? How are you useful? What would you do in this situation? And that's why they would ask you that type of question is basically open-ended. It's to basically see how you think. Don't be afraid of those questions. There's really no wrong answer in that. They just want to basically map out your thinking skills and your ability to basically, think on your feet.
That would be right. There's no right or wrong answers in those scenarios. It's more so, can you back it up and can you justify why you have chosen a fork rather than a spoon? Okay. There's no right or wrong answer, so don't worry about those. They're not trying to catch you out. It's more thinking, it's your thought processes behind everything. All right. So to wrap up the session, I know a few people have had to leave there because we are running slightly over. I just have one small slide to share, and it's really just a call to action and next steps from today. So if you can bear with me just till I bring that up, and I will be as quickly as possible. And so firstly, just to point out a few upcoming sessions over the course of the rest of the week. A few of these have already been posted into the chat box. I know Donna and Shauna have been very active in doing that for me, which has been fantastic. We do have Presenting with Impact. It's running this afternoon, but it's also running tomorrow as well. And we did talk earlier on about, being very confident in those scenarios we were talking to people. I sat in this session yesterday, the Presenting with Impact, and there are loads and loads of really useful hints and tips about how you can be much more confident when you're talking to people, whether it's a big audience, whether it's a small presentation. And remember that sometimes presentations can form part of an interview process too. So that's a really, really useful session. And just go to the Skills website and you will be able to book in for that. We do also have a design thinking session, which is running on the 27th, which is tomorrow. So again, for anybody maybe who's looking for placement, this will involve you thinking about a scenario, putting your problem solving skills into action, and that's a really good session as well. And for anybody who perhaps is at the final stages of your degree and moving out into, what next after graduation, there is another Careers Cafe running on Friday, and that's going to look at graduation, what's next. But what I will point out is it's open to everybody, okay? So it's not just people who are just about to leave university. Perhaps you're in first year or second year, maybe you're on placement this year and you're thinking about, right, what are my next steps? What am I going to be working towards? That'll be a really good, insightful session as well. And then just one other one that I really do want to point out to everybody, and it was put into the chat box earlier, the Northern Ireland Senior Women's Football Team, hope I have their title correct, will be joining us for a really, really interesting session about their journey to Euro 2022. Now, you don't have to be a football fanatic, okay? I know I certainly have no interest in football, but I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about their journey, okay, all the ups and downs along the way and how they had that successful outcome. So that will be a really, really good inspirational story for all of us, whether we're sport-minded or not, all right? And then apart from those sessions, just remind you that we do have daily one-to-one advice and coaching sessions available through Handshake. You can follow us on social media and keep up to date with everything that's going on. And we have a huge range of digital resources to help you with your job and placement search, okay? So please feel free to go to the employability website or to the Future Skills Week website as well, where you'll find all of those links. So that was a really quick run through, a really quick call to action at the end. But does anybody have any further questions before we bring the session to a close?
About how you can access the recording there, Laura.
Okay, so the recording will be made available through the Future Skills Week website. So if you go back to the schedule, you will find that the link to the recording will actually replace the register link that our students would have seen up until this point. So it will be available where the session was normally held on the website. And I'll finish off actually saying about Edge, because I know we did get quite a few questions at the beginning about that. Anybody who is wanting to use Future Skills Week as an Edge activity, as long as you've completed 4 or more sessions throughout this week, you will be able to apply for that. Now, there will be a link to a form which will be added to the website at the end of the week, and we will also endeavour to get that sent out via email as well. So once you've completed your 4 sessions, once the link has been made available to you, simply complete that form and return that to us, and we will make sure that's added to your Edge record. For anybody who can't apply for Edge, so perhaps you are just about to graduate, or perhaps you're maybe one of our postgraduate students, or somebody maybe just who isn't currently with us at the university, please feel free to go to the website. Again, we will make a live link where you can let us know what sessions you've attended, and again, if you've attended 4 or more, we'll issue you with a certificate of attendance, okay? So although we can't give you Edge recognition, we will certainly give you recognition for your engagement and participation throughout the week. All right, so Chris has left us, but big thank you to Megan and to Alicia for joining us. And I know we've kept you a wee bit longer than what we normally would have. I'm just going to stop recording.